My name is Sarah Veggie, and today I will be talking to you about genetically modified organisms, or commonly known as GMOs. Did you know Americans eat their weight in genetically engineered food every year? According to EXG.org's AgMag, on average, people eat an estimated 193 pounds of genetically modified food in a 12-month period, and a typical American adult only weighs 179 pounds. So what exactly is all the hype about GMOs for? Many people believe that there has not been enough research done on genetically modified organisms to deem them as safe for human intake. Through doing my research and reading articles, I have noticed that people do not really know much about GMOs and how they actually work. I feel that people need to know what a GMO actually is so they can develop an educated opinion on the subject. Genetically modified organisms has always been an interest of mine, especially since my family is part of the farming industry and I was also a former ag major. I have always personally wondered how they administer the DNA into different organisms. Through doing my research, I have been informed on this process and how to look for it in the foods we eat daily. First, I will tell you what exactly a genetically modified organism is, and then I will go into how they administer them into other organisms. Next, I will give examples on the crops that GMOs are most prominent in, and then I will give you clues on how to look for GMOs in your food. Then I will tell you the risks and benefits of genetically modified organisms. So, to kick it off, what is a genetically modified organism? The Institute for Responsible Technology says a GMO, or genetically modified organism, is a result of a laboratory process where genes from the DNA of one species are extracted and artificially forced into the genes of an unrelated plant or animal. This process can also be called genetic engineering or genetic modification. So how is this genetic engineering done? Living organisms have a natural barrier to protect themselves against the introduction of DNA from a different species. Therefore, one must force the DNA from one species into another. So some of those methods for forcing the DNA into a different species are: number 1, using a virus to infect the animal or plant cell with new DNA. 2, coating DNA onto tiny metal pellets and firing it with a special gun into the cells. 3, injecting new DNA into fertilized eggs with a very fine needle. 4th, and the last one, using electric shocks to create holes in the membrane covering sperm and then forcing new DNA into the sperm through the new holes created through the electric shock. This sounds like a very complicated process. An estimate done by the Huffington Post in 2012 says that 70% of foods sold in supermarkets contain GMOs. They also generated a list of the top 7 genetically modified crops in the United States. The first and probably the most common one was corn. Corn is the number 1 crop grown in the United States. 88% of that corn is genetically modified. This is also a staple in animal feed. Then soybeans. 93% of soybeans is genetically modified and is usually what makes up hydrogenated oils, which is found in a lot of our food. Cottonseed was the third one and is 94% genetically modified and is used for vegetable oil, margarine, and shortening products. The next 4 crops are less common but have high percentage of genetically modified product. Those 4 are alfalfa, which is commonly used for cows and eating, papaya, canola, and then sugar beets, which had the highest percentage of genetically modified output. A question that is often asked about GMOs is, how do you know if they are in the food you eat? Despite industry concerns, food manufacturers are not required to label GMO ingredients, according to the justlabelIt.org in February 2016. But even though it isn't labeled, there are some ways you can look for GMOs in your food by certain ingredients listed on the label, according to mamavation.com. Look for words like high fructose corn syrup, aspartame, monosodium glutamate, and mono and diglycerides. Those are just a few examples of things you can look for, but there's more information online about what you can look for. Now, what you're all wondering, risks of GMOs. According to the Food and Chemical Toxicology Report from London in 2012, people are concerned because it is a new science and there has been no long-term studies on health effects from GMOs. government and food industry not regulate testing, and the multinational corporations that predominantly control the nation's food supply are left to self-regulate. But along with the risk, there is also a lot of benefits of GMOs. And from classes.edu, they say GMOs can help create plants better resistant to weeds, pests, and other diseases. Bigger yields to make land use more efficient. Foods with better texture, flavor, and nutritional value. A longer shelf life, and a more sustainable way to feed the world. Now that we've gone through all that, through my research, I discovered there's a lot of things I did not know about GMOs and how they're used. I feel my research will help my audience understand what a GMO is and allow them to develop their own opinion based on factual and credible information. I discussed what a GMO is and how they are administered, and I talked about the benefits of GMOs and the risks. Genetically modified organisms are new to us, and many people are unsure how they feel about them. This presentation will give them an insight of GMOs and how they are used in our everyday world. Thank you.